Good Monday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a great weekend. Browns in Berea on the practice field. Second practice in Berea after going to the Greenbrier. And let's take a look. Some video as Deshaun Watson finds Elijah Moore. Moore was banged up. He had cleared the concussion protocol back on the field. This time Watson to one of his tight ends, Giovanni Ricci. And Ricci turns upfield. Watson finds Cedric Tillman in this 11-on-11. Training camp kind of hard to characterize. Devin Bush gets the interception there. Defense had the better of things today. This is concerning. Late in the workout, Zadarius Smith being carted off. Now, the good news, if you're looking for some, Zadarius Smith is in the front seat. He's not on the back of it, but unable to leave under his own power, gets carted off from the practice field. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. And Tim, the main thing we always say, you want to stay healthy. So again, no reports on what exactly it was with Zadarius Smith. It was hot. Again, it's good news that he was in the front seat as opposed to the back of the cart, but you never want to see somebody carted off from training camp for practice.
Not at all. And I mean, there's been a couple, players have already gone down with injuries, I believe, notably Cam Sample of the Bengals, I think, has a season-ending injury. One of their depth defensive ends, I think, just suffered an injury today. But, with Zadarius Smith, you mentioned it is hot, it is humid. You hope, if you're the Browns and you're Browns fan, that it's just cramping. And obviously, we don't want to speculate. We'll wait for the official word to come out. But, obviously, it would not be good for the Browns to lose Zadarius Smith for an extended amount of time. I know they have depth with Obo Okoronkwo and Alex Wright, who have certainly proven themselves, particularly last season with Wright when he really broke out in the second half of the season. But obviously, you want to have that depth be there intact as early as possible, especially against that great Cowboys offense in week 1.
Yep, so we'll just wait to hear what the nature of it is. Everybody met with the media beforehand, so we probably won't have anything from either Kevin Stefanski in terms of a statement until tomorrow. Speaking of which, everybody got a nice tour of some of the upgrades of the Browns facility. They made a lot of them. This is one of the experiential rooms, and what it is, 2 interactive video rooms that have 25-yard wide video screens, allows for players to do film study outside of the typical classroom setting, and it allows more of a simulation of what they would see come game day. So 25-foot video screens to help for film study. Kevin Stefanski talked about the experiential rooms.
When you're trying to teach, Mary Kay, you so often hear us talk about teaching and learning, and we just feel that that's a great classroom for the guys to have an interactive meeting, if you will. And you saw, it's a beautiful facility. Those rooms in particular, we're getting to know them. There's so many things that we can do in there. We're really scratching the surface, but an opportunity to not just sit in the old stale classrooms of yesteryear, where you can now go in there and really show the guys an audio visual that gets really captures their attention. So the guys have responded really well to it, but we are still, as a staff, figuring out all the different things that we can utilize with those rooms in particular.
And Tim, the upgrade to the weight room was just as eye-popping. It goes back to the players' survey that they had, so that's one of the reasons that the Browns made the upgrades. Those things, I mean, that's kind of cool. I got to be honest with you. It's life-size film study.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people say one of the best ways to learn is by doing, and it's a pretty clever idea. I think you can see in the video, there's like 4 projectors stacked up. They have the hash marks laid out. And the idea that you can kind of simulate a lineup and be out there physically looking at stuff as far as a field perspective, it creates a different type of, film study. Obviously, certainly more interactive than just sitting in a desk or at a table just jotting down notes. Kind of reminds me a few years ago, we were talking beforehand when Brian Kelly would give his quarterbacks virtual reality helmets for, film studying, those different types of things. So I'm a big technology guy. I always love that kind of stuff. And it's very interesting. And, like you said, obviously with the Browns, getting criticized recently but in those player surveys for not having great weight rooms and those different things. Certainly, based on what you see this morning, that the Haslams really stepped up and made sure that the team had some great new equipment to work with. It'll be interesting to see how that continues to evolve going forward.
Yeah, and you know what? It doesn't surprise me. Jimmy Haslam's been willing to spend money on everything relative to that franchise, so not surprised. Ken Dorsey, new offensive coordinator, talked about what he's seeing from Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson as he comes back from that shoulder surgery.
He's progressing well for us. I think he's doing a really good job, one, managing his body, managing his shoulder, having great open communication with us to make sure it feels like it's in the right space for him so he can go out and play confident. But physically out there throwing it, I think, you saw him, get some balls vertically downfield throughout camp, which is very encouraging to see and a great positive for us. And you see him making, all the throws necessary that we need to make within the system. And, to Tony's point, like the more he practices and the more he sees those live reps in practice, the more comfortable he's going to get kind of as we go right here.
Again, it's training camp. There's not a lot of hitting going on. It's 11 on 11. So it's good news, but you got to let them kind of get into gameplay and go from there.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to be curious, over the next couple days and weeks to see how many preseason reps Deshaun Watson gets. You assume he might not get any in the second game against the Vikings because they have the joint practices. So basically it would just be the first and the third preseason games that you would most likely see him. But the Browns seem like they've really been very intentional and deliberate with how they've managed Deshaun Watson, and it seems like a very smart thing. Obviously, you want to always err on the side of caution when it comes to injuries and making sure you're taking care of guys. They do that. They've done that with a lot of their players, so it doesn't surprise me that they've done it with Deshaun Watson. And really, the thing that we've seen, when you look at some of those videos that have been posted out of training camp, if you had not been told that Deshaun Watson had shoulder surgery, you would not have known that he had just had shoulder surgery based on some of the throws. Yeah, the deep ball, I think, still has to get there. He had a couple nice ones on Sunday, but it seems like he's in a pretty good place right now as far as his recovery is concerned. Now the next step, like you said, live reps and, being in a game situation where the threat of getting hit is real and apparent. So we'll have to see how he responds to that test, because that basically is one of the last steps in his rehab.
So the Browns had a walkthrough early this morning. Then they had the media availability between those two. Nick Chubb and Nyheim Hines worked out with an athletic trainer, similar to what they did at the Greenbrier. Sprints, agility over bags, and more. And again, another step and another good thing is, the cutting and the agility that they're ramping up both of those guys. And it's not unlike Deshaun Watson. Watson's ahead of them because he's practicing. So at some point, you hope they can, move into the drill portion of practices.
Yeah, and I think that's, like you said, that's obviously the next step in their progression, is making sure they get on the field, individual drills, maybe eventually even 7-on-7 or 11-on-11s when it comes to both of those guys. Especially with Nick Chubb coming off two separate knee surgeries from the awful knee injury he had in Pittsburgh in week 2. Obviously, I think the Browns are smart to be patient, to take their time with Nick Chubb, because again, it's a very significant knee injury that he's coming back from. Nyheim Hines obviously had the off the field injury that kept him out, that he's still working back from. So it's not a surprise, just work them in slowly. I mean, I don't know if they'd be ready for the opener personally, but especially with Nick Chubb, I would not rush him. Make sure that he's good to go. Obviously, the strength looks like it's still there. The speed and the agility looks like it's still there. But you want to, I think in that case with Nick Chubb, considering how important he is to the franchise, maybe be a little overcautious might not be a bad way to go with him.
So the other thing that has resurfaced is the Brandon Aiyuk talk. Still holding out. Doesn't look like those two, being the 49ers and Aiyuk, are going to come to an agreement anytime soon. Browns and Patriots are front runners in trade discussions for the 49ers. Brandon Aiyuk, per a league source, both teams are offering more than $30 million. That would be to Aiyuk in terms of a contract extension that he wants, or a new contract. The Steelers are also in the mix. This should come down to the Patriots and the Browns. Aiyuk not expected to be a 49er in 2024, that from Cam Marino. Now, another source, though, says Though things remain fluid between Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers, their trade partners, the Steelers have been gaining traction as Ayuk's preferred destination, I'm told. Despite strong offers from other teams, Pittsburgh has emerged as a real option. Tim, I got nothing with that one. I can't imagine why Aiyuk would prefer to go to the Steelers. Well, I'll back off of that and say Mike Tomlin might be the reason that he prefers to go to the Steelers. But I can't imagine that people are running out to pay him $30+ million a year for 4 years. And that is what he's going to be looking for as a top of the market wide receiver.
I mean, I do think that was what he's ultimately going to end up getting, because that's just the way the receiver market has played out over the last year and two. Is he worth it? I don't know, because I look at Ayuk's numbers. Yeah, they're really good. 1,300+ yards last season, 7 touchdowns.
We got an owner that's spending money. We got a top-notch coach that if he gets 11 wins, will win more games or is equal to Schottenheimer, which is the gold standard. We got a great front office, and because we got such a good run organization now, we got top players wanting to come here. We got top coaches wanting to come here. And the only complaint I got about the whole thing is get rid of the elf and put the dog in the middle. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, I don't mind the elf. I'm okay with the elf. The elf's kind of a throwback. But to the caller's point, front office has done a nice job. I think Kevin Stefanski's done a real nice job. Now the goal is you've got the extension. You've built the foundation. You got to become a perennial playoff team, home playoff game, make a run.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, thinking about it, this is probably the best sustained success the Browns have had since the late 80s. Obviously, it's far from that success when they went to 3 AFC title games in 4 seasons, but 2 playoffs in 4 years, a playoff win in that stretch, and 2 11-win seasons in 4 years. Like I said, best time since well before they came back. So I think Browns fans should be pretty happy, especially the last 4 years since they brought in Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. Since those two guys have come in, you've seen this organization really kind of shift into that level that we've seen the Steelers and the Ravens kind of have as far as consistency goes. The idea of having consistency, is always good, but consistency for consistency's sake is not as good. So you have to have the right people in place, and it seems like the Haslams have got that. And be important to see how that is going forward. Can they make it further? Can they win a division title? Can they get to the AFC title game, win the Super Bowl? Certainly, those are things that now they have to start doing. And I agree with you. I'm very Team Elf.
Yep. All right. We're good. All right. So we're a little older, though, so that could be a younger caller. Younger callers don't like the elf.
Well, I'm 35, so.
I got you by several years, several decades. Jim Schwartz is a guy that is really familiar with Mike Vrabel. Vrabel he was actually a senior consultant for him when he was the defensive coordinator in Tennessee. Schwartz met with the media today, talked about the kind of impact that Mike Vrabel can have on this year's Browns.
I have a background with Braves from number one before, but also last 2 years in Tennessee. So I was sort of a second set of eyes for him and a sounding board for him and a fill gaps where needed guy. And Braves can do all those things. Anytime you're adding good coaches to your staff, he's spending most of his time on offense and special teams right now, but it's just a good resource for us. He'll make a major contribution to our team.
Tim, people are probably sick of me saying I think he was one of the best coaches in the NFL, and the fact that he doesn't have a job as a head coach shocks me.
Yeah, I mean, people saying Bill Belichick not having a job is shocking. It makes no sense that Mike Vrabel's not a head coach somewhere this year. I mean, the job he did in Tennessee, taking a team with Ryan Tannehill as a quarterback all the way to the AFC Championship game, beating a Ravens team on the road with Lamar Jackson as the MVP and blowing them out, in fact, to do it. I mean, that's a tremendous credit to Mike Vrabel and the job he did with the Titans, really getting the most out of that team. I think the reasons, obviously, he's gone is that they just weren't able to sustain it. They were never able to find that high-end quarterback to complement Derrick Henry and the play of that defense before it really kind of all fell apart. And now you got Tennessee going in a rebuild. But for the Browns, obviously, having Mike Vrabel around, in the practice field, in the offices, and film study, obviously, we won't see him on Sundays, certainly, but the fact that he's going to be there the other 6 days of the week, it's just such an invaluable resource because of just how effective he is. He's been as a head coach because of how smart he is, because of how much he's seen. That's just such a great resource, and the fact that we've heard it from multiple coaches throughout the start of training camp just tells you just how significant that addition has been, and it certainly should play a role in success this season.
Yeah, and they've come out and said he won't have a role on game day. That's unfortunate because I think he's one of the best in-game coaches in the NFL as well. Biggest question facing each AFC teams. Browns were 3-6 on the road. They forced 14 turnovers on the road, 14 at home. They allowed 282 points on the road, 209 at home. The defense allowed 1,943 yards, 806 rushing, 1,137 at home, 3,006 on the road, 1,943 passing, 1,063 on the road. Why? Well, if you could answer the question why, they'd fix it.
Yeah, I mean, that was really the big Achilles heel last season was the defense was night and day when they were playing at Cleveland Browns Stadium compared to playing anywhere else next season. And obviously, it seems like that's a big, sticking point for Jim Schwartz and this defense as far as something they want to fix going forward this season. And the thing about the schedule, looking at it again, I think I've mentioned this before, most of their toughest games are at home. They got the Chiefs at home, they got the Dolphins at home, the Cowboys at home, in addition to the AFC North slate. But then you look on the road, and outside of the division, really the only really good team, really good team you see on the schedule that the Browns are going to have to play on the road is Philadelphia, and that looks like it's a 1 o'clock kickoff. So that's not prime time in Philly, which would be a completely different animal. But considering that is the toughest non-division game you have. And that's not to be a slight to the Eagles, who I think are a really good football team. I think they're going to really rebound this year. But certainly the ability for this team to be better defensively on the road is right there for them. It's just a matter of going on doing it.
So Jim Schwartz was also asked about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah heading into his second season, and how he'll be used.
You don't want to say load management, but I don't know if there's another word for it. But, stuff like that is on our minds, whether it comes to all our position players. We were able to rotate some corners through last year, able to rotate defensive linemen. We were rotating linebackers, mainly because of an injury situation with Aiyuk and Sione last year. But it was able to benefit a lot of guys as we went further. He got a little taste of it last year being on the field for dime and for some of the packages. We've extended that. He's at a completely different spot right now. Injury notwithstanding, he's at a completely different spot now compared to 2023.
Think about that. I mean, he the trajectory a season ago was like that. So if he starts up there, it's not unreasonable to expect him to be one of the better linebackers in the league. I think he probably expects that of himself.
I wouldn't blame him if he does, because he's certainly got the talent as we've seen the last few seasons. When he's healthy, he seems like every year he's gotten better and better and better. Last season was just an outstanding year for JOK. Now he's going into a contract year. Certainly, I think he should get a good extension. And then you look at the Browns depth chart, obviously, with several guys leaving in free agency: Anthony Walker, Sione Takitaki. JOK suddenly becomes the face of the linebacker room right now. Obviously, he's got a good veteran, Jordan Hicks, to kind of lean on, for help in certain situations. But right now, JOK is the guy. So he's, like Jim Schwartz was talking about, a chance to see him in a lot more different situations. And he's a guy that now you really have to lean on. And if he continues this production, even gets better as a guy you lean on, that is what really can take him to another level as far as a leader on this defense.
Yeah, and so JOK, Hicks, and Tony Fields all banged up and did not practice today, just as a footnote. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Ken Dorsey, Browns' new offensive coordinator. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Browns' new offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey, has experience calling plays, did so with the Bills and Josh Allen. Today he was asked about Kevin Stefanski announcing that he will be retaining play-calling duties this year.
From day one, in this process of interviewing and all that, Kev was very upfront and honest about everything, and you don't always get that, in the league, and he was very, very upfront, and so I knew it going in that there was going to be a process to go through, and at the end of the day, I want to win football games, and Kevin's a fantastic play caller, and I feel good about where we're at.
Tim, the thing is, if Ken Dorsey can help fix Deshaun Watson, career path is going like that, especially after 2-3 years. And he's a guy that's really good with mobile quarterbacks. We've talked about that ad nauseum here.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the track record you have with Cam Newton and then Josh Allen the last handful of seasons. So no reason to think he certainly can't help Deshaun Watson kind of get back to that Houston form that we talked about quite a few times over the last several months. But I did think it's interesting that, he basically admitted that, he understood that coming to Cleveland, there was a chance he knew going in, there was a chance he wasn't going to call plays. And I think the Browns ultimately made the right decision going with Kevin Stefanski is the play caller again, considering how well he's done in that role since he's become the head coach, especially last season, considering the turnover quarterback and the fact that they still won 11 games in spite of all that. Bringing Ken Dorsey certainly should add some different layers to this offense and kind of keep things fresh, as we talked about before. The fact that this offense should continue to evolve, the installation of the choice route concept, which has been a popular buzzword throughout the last several months. It's going to be interesting to see how Kevin Stefanski implements Ken Dorsey's offense and some of his philosophies and other ways of doing things as far as scheme goes, and marrying it to what he's already had in Cleveland that's already proved to be pretty successful.
Yeah, the one thing I would say, it would be much easier to go from Kevin Stefanski calling plays to Ken Dorsey if there's something that doesn't work out relative to this offense than it would be if Ken Dorsey took over play calling and you go to Kevin Stefanski, then you almost have a lame duck situation with your offensive coordinator. So it makes much more sense to start out with Kevin Stefanski calling plays. This is one surprising Browns player who could make or break the 2024 season from clutch points. They go with Jerome Ford. That would be far down my list, but in spurts, he has showcased elite speed that translates perfectly to Browns' vision for their backfield. Stefanski has emphasized multifaceted offense with Watson at the helm. As such, Ford's ability to catch the ball out of the backfield and threaten defenses in the passing game is a key piece to that puzzle. And again, he had too many plays where he had 0 or 1 yards. I think it was in the 20s relative to the percentage of time that he had that did that. Again, it would be important to note that Browns were playing with their 4th and 5th tackles for most of the time he was running the football.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a downgrade when you go from having either Jedrick Wills, Jack Conklin, or DeJuan Jones out there to Jaron Christian and James Hudson III. That's just kind of the reality of what it is. And obviously, it impacted Jerome Ford. Even looking at his game log, plenty of games last season where he had, carries of at least 20 yards. He had 2 69-yard runs last season, one of which was that touchdown against the Colts that we talked about, I think, last week. But even look at the numbers, from December 3rd on, Jerome Ford had only one run of more than 20 yards, and that was a 26-yard run against Jacksonville on December 10th. That's it. So I think obviously he needs to have more consistency and avoid being such a boom or bust running back. But what we did see is Jerome Ford could be a pretty good receiving running back. I mean, we've seen plenty of good ability to make catches out of the backfield. Actually, he had more receiving touchdowns last year than rushing touchdowns, which I think is a promising sign going forward, that even if, he's not a lead running back going forward, even if he's maybe 1B or a clear number 2 in a tandem, that there's a role for him as a pass catcher because he's shown he can make plays out of the backfield with his hands.
So this one is from the Bleacher Report. This is quarterbacks that teams must pursue in a trade right now. And one of them is the Browns' Tyler Huntley. Since no franchise will carry 4 quarterbacks in the regular season, the Browns need to cut or trade one of them. Given that DTR started 3 games in his rookie season, Cleveland would probably prefer to keep him around as a developmental quarterback behind Deshaun Watson and Jameis Winston. Yeah, that's true. The one thing that I looked up when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Huntley's only 2 years older than DTR, and I liked him. We saw him play. He started a couple games for the Ravens when Jackson was hurt. He's a problem for defenses. I thought it was a great pickup to get him.
Yeah, it's a nice sleeper pick as far as a quarterback goes, and I feel like there will be some value to him, even though we can all joke about the fact that Tyler Huntley somehow made a Pro Bowl. The fact is, he's got some starts under his belt in the NFL, 9 career starts, 8 touchdown passes, 7 interceptions. Not great numbers, but I think when you're always looking for a backup, you always want an interesting ability with a quarterback. And I think with Tyler Huntley, 500 plus rushing yards in his career as well, certainly has an ability to be a dual threat quarterback. And, the thing with Tyler Huntley is I think we all know who the 1-2 of this Browns depth chart is going to be. It feels like DTR seems like from all the reports out there that DTR has done really well in camp, that he's really continued to improve heading into year 2, which I always thought was going to be important. That I think I said around when you get drafted, around when he got drafted, that he wasn't a guy that you wanted to play as a rookie. Browns, of course, had to play him because they ultimately had no choice. But certainly a guy who seems like he's earning his right to be the number 3 quarterback, and you never know how injuries are going to stack up and play out in a training camp across the NFL. And certainly Tyler Huntley can be a commodity down the road. I mean, we saw Josh Dobbs get traded last year for a 5th-round pick. So it's going to be interesting how these next few weeks play out as far as the health of quarterbacks go.
Yeah, and the other thing is it may come down to which of those 2 quarterbacks a team is willing to give you a higher draft pick for.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately asset management, I think, when it comes to backup quarterbacks. I mean, ultimately, if any team's down to their 3rd quarterback, the odds of making a playoff run like the Browns did last year are very remote. Obviously, I think we can all agree what the Browns did last year was a very uncommon situation. So just the fact that if you have to go to your 3rd quarterback, your season's probably doomed. So maybe it's a case where if you're somehow able to get a 4th-round pick for one of those guys, it's an easy decision, I think, for Andrew Berry.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Jim Schwartz. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer at cleveland.com. Jim Schwartz, Browns defensive coordinator, was asked about some of the challenges the Browns defense will have facing mobile quarterbacks and a number of the really good ones this year.
You can get a mobile quarterback scramble, and he can start his scramble, get out of the pocket, and you tackle him for a gain of 0 or -1, and it's a sack. Was it really a sack? I don't know. So, so the numbers sort of probably bear out, but, we're used to dealing with mobile quarterbacks. We've added a couple in our division with Pittsburgh, with Russell and with Fields. Baltimore's always, had that guy. And when Burrow has been at his best, he's had really good mobility. I know he's had some injuries over the last couple of years. Maybe that changes their philosophy a little bit, but it's something that's on our radar every week. And again, like a quarterback scramble and gaining the first down, what's the difference in that as opposed to completing the ball? It's all the same. It just spreads you a little bit thinner defensively, but it's more of an emphasis on your speed and your discipline and your pass rush.
Tim, I don't know about you. The mobile quarterbacks concerned me last year, so they concern me again this year.
I mean, Jim Schwartz and every other defensive coordinator, because I think we've learned there is no magic formula for stopping mobile quarterbacks, because they all do things so differently, whether they run to run or they run and scramble to pass. The fact is, pretty much every quarterback you see now is a mobile quarterback. I think the days of the 6'5" statuesque pocket passers, those seem to be way gone. And we're in this era of mobile quarterbacks, and it's so tough because you can do everything right in the pass rush, and then all the quarterback has to do is just kind of slip through, and all of a sudden he's got all this room to run, and it puts so much stress on your defense. Do you go after the quarterback and risk a receiver getting open deep down the field, or do you let him run for 10, 11 yards and then just kind of focus more on bend but don't break? So it really puts you in a bind. And like Jim Schwartz was talking about, you really kind of have to pick your poison, and you really have to rely on your discipline and speed defensively to keep those quarterbacks contained and do whatever you can to make those guys as one-dimensional as possible and live with the results.
So this one's from the Bleacher Report. One reason every NFL team shouldn't be overlooked in 2024. For the Browns, they say defensive strength. What separates Baltimore from Cleveland is a few hundred miles and the effectiveness of their offenses. But on defense, both AFC North squads are nightmare fuel. Cleveland tied the Ravens for the league's top spot in yards allowed per play in 2023, returns a bulk of that defense this season. In fact, they returned most of that defense, and Baltimore lost some of their defense, including their defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying it for a while. I felt like Baltimore is kind of ultimately doomed it, for lack of a better word, doomed to take a step back because they lost just so much on defense last season. And the Browns, we talked about, they're essentially running it back with this defense as it is and really not adding too much outside of Quentin Jefferson and Mike Hall Jr. on the defensive line. So certainly you would think because of the talent they had, because of what Jim Schwartz was able to do last season, that this defense has an ability to be just as good as it was a year ago. It's going to be hard to because it's a tougher slate of quarterbacks you're going up against. So they could still be playing very well, be giving up a lot of yards and a lot of points, especially compared to a year ago. So I certainly they're going to have to perform well again, especially if or at least until the offense really finds its footing with Deshaun Watson, and especially if he could stay healthy back there. But there's going to be a lot of pressure on the defense and to keep these games from becoming these shootouts.
So this one also from the Bleacher Report. 3 bargain free agents the Browns must target. They say running back Dalvin Cook. Browns will not have a healthy Nick Chubb for quite some time. That might not exactly be true. If one of their other running backs is unavailable, they need to land a veteran running back like Dalvin Cook to at least have another back with starting experience. They also say running back Jerick McKinnon. Browns have Hines on the roster to be a third down and red zone pass catcher, but his current status not exactly promising. McKinnon would fit the Hines role even better than Hines would in the Browns offense. They want Hines as a kick returner too, but his health is a concern. Offensive tackle Donovan Smith. Cleveland may not need Smith in a few weeks if Wills and Conklin are back in starting caliber form, but right now the Browns should explore all their options in case a setback occurs so they can properly protect Deshaun Watson. I can't see any of those guys. They already are trying to figure out how you get 3 starting caliber tackles into 2 spots. You have Jerome Ford, who the Browns like a whole lot better than most of the national people writing about this. And you have, assuming he's okay, D'Onta Foreman, who's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I mean, D'Onta Foreman had a pretty good season last year. It seems like, he's still got plenty left in the tank, and really it's a nice change-up to what they have. But of those 3, I think I've said it before, Donovan Smith to me would be the guy, especially, just a chance to upgrade on that 4th tackle position, because you want to maybe some paranoia in there, but you want to make sure you have protection in case you have another situation where 2 tackles aren't healthy to go. And certainly over the course of a long season, certainly there'll be games where you need one of your backup tackles to go. And Donovan Smith certainly has a lot of experience, but yeah, I cannot get behind bringing Dalvin Cook. And obviously he's getting up there in age. He turns 29 and actually 5 days. He turns 29 years old. Did not have a good season last year. Just 214 yards rushing between stints with the Jets and the Ravens. Didn't even play for the Ravens. And then with Jerick McKinnon, yeah, he's 32 years old, but I think he did not really have a great season last year. Just a grand total of 21 carries for 60 yards, but still a decent receiving option, I guess, if you're looking for pure depth. And between those 2 guys, McKinnon for me would be an easier fit because it seems like he really has a good place in a tandem situation like he was used in Kansas City.
All right, before I let you go, this one is from Pro Football Network. 2024 NFL season predictions. AFC North. They have the Browns at 12-5, winning the division. Ravens at 11-6, Steelers 10-7, Bengals at 9-8. So second year in a row, they have all teams in the North being over 500. AFC playoff picture. They have the Dolphins as the number 1 seed, 14-3. Colts 12-5, and Browns 12-5 as the 3 seed. They also have the Ravens and the Steelers making the playoffs as the 6th and 7th seed. Tim, again, with the North, I've said this, you could argue that any of the 4 of them win the division, and any of the 4 of them finish 4th in the division. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if all of them are 9-7 or better again this year.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be another good year, I think, within this division. I mean, last year, obviously, the first time in NFL history, a division had all of its teams finishing with winning records. Just goes to show you just the strength of how good this division is. Obviously, you know, a team season is going to be wrecked by injury. We don't know who it's going to be. And quarterbacks aren't always going to be healthy. Star players aren't always going to be healthy. Obviously, it has to play itself out over a 17-game season, but certainly the Browns, as we talked about, I think they do obviously have a very legitimate case, especially if Deshaun Watson can be healthy. I've argued if he's healthy, I think he can return to that Houston form, and if he does, the Browns should certainly be in the mix. I don't know if you look at those playoff standings, I would be shocked that the Dolphins were the number 1 seed. I think they've had too many issues winning away from Miami and winning against really good teams, especially on the road. The Colts, I just don't think they're ready to be better than the Texans right now, but if you're a Browns fan and you would tell them the Browns are going to win the North and host the Ravens in a wild card game, I wonder how many fans would sign up for that. A home playoff game, which hadn't happened now going on 30 plus years, and a chance to do it against a division rival in Baltimore, a guy in Lamar Jackson, who, I mean, obviously he's played very well against the Browns, but has had struggles in the playoffs. I think that'd be such a fun opportunity and a fun moment for the Browns if they can break their home playoff drought, and especially if they can do it against a division opponent. It'd be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, so the Browns have never won the AFC North. Last time they won a division in 1989. To your point about the Dolphins, I would only take them at 14-3 if you're telling me they're playing in 80-degree weather. So I guess it would have to be beach football for the Dolphins to go 14-3 on the year. Tim Bielik, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
You got it. Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
All right, Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out. Always really insightful stuff for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. We're going to take a quick time out. Dalton Wasserman from PFF, straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch. Find the letters, make a match. Lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio Lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions in prizes, don't you know?
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. New offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey talked about the way Deshaun Watson is playing and throwing in this new offense the Browns are installing.
Speak for him. Obviously, I think that's something that he can attest to. But you know, from my experience and just from coaching the position, I think it's a lot of the position in general is about confidence, you know, and going out and doing it and repping it and, hey, making a mistake or making a good play and learning from those things and growing from those things. So I think part of that is always just the confidence of going out, hey, can I fit this into this window in practice? And that's where you learn, can I do it in the game, you know? So you do want to obviously play practice like a game and make a game like, but also, you know, you're gonna try to do some things to see, hey, can I do that in the game so it's not the first time? And I think that's the feel he's continuing to get within what we're doing systematically.
With that, let's welcome in Dalton Wasserman from PFF. He's a data analyst, co-host of the PFF College Football Show. Dalton, appreciate the time. What about it? What have you seen the last couple of years from Deshaun Watson? And is there a reasonable chance you see that improve?
So we haven't seen a whole lot of great with Watson, right? He missed, obviously, a year and a half of football, and he's dealt with some injuries in Cleveland. But I think Coach Dorsey makes a great point about confidence, and there's really two layers to it, right? The first one is the schematic one with the playbook and the new offensive coordinator himself that he mentioned. But the other is just the physical ability of Watson, and it's weird to say that for a guy in his late 20s, but talk about a guy that missed a year and a half and then the last couple of years hasn't really played the full complement of snaps. And what we see over the last 2 years is he doesn't make as many big throws as he used to in Houston, and he doesn't quite run as much as he did back in his prime in Houston. So you kind of look for him to both refine that physical ability, obviously after another big shoulder surgery, and to find the confidence in the playbook to be able to execute. So it's a lot to work for, but is it in there? Is he still young enough for him to get it back? But yes, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah, the other thing that's kind of interesting is, he missed 11 games the first year because of the suspension. Then it was play a couple of games, miss a couple of games, and again, it's hard to have confidence in anything when you don't do it regularly.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, especially last year, he plays the first 3 games and then he's hurt and then he plays a few more. It's a hard evaluation because we haven't seen him just be able to play with a consistent rhythm, right? When it's stop and start and stop and start. It's why really, it's so hard to be a backup quarterback in the NFL because you never know when you're going to play. But when you're the $50 million starter, you have to be out there every single week, right? The best ability is availability. And if he's out there for 17 games, we can get a true evaluation of him both physically and mentally. We just really haven't been able to do that during his first 2 years in Cleveland.
Yep, without question. So this is from ESPN.com. Training camp battles to watch for all 32 teams. For the Browns, they say wide receiver. Cleveland, rather unproven receiver room behind Amari Cooper. A group of wideouts vying for more prominent roles includes Elijah Moore, produced career best in 2023. Second-year player Cedric Tillman, who was a standout in the offseason workouts. Plenty of opportunities in an offense expected to use more 3 and 4 wide receiver sets in 2024. They don't mention Jerry Jeudy in there, who's the number 2 guy. David Bell as well. So they are young guys who haven't proven themselves yet. That's fair.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's pretty clear that Judy's going to be the number 2 guy with what they gave up to get him from Denver, and he was a former first-round pick. There's a lot of belief that Judy can still be at least the second guy behind Amari Cooper, but I think it's a pretty open competition after that. Elijah Moore did have a career-best season, but that's still only topped out around 600 yards, even with a high target volume. And then, you look at Cedric Tillman and David Bell, and even this year's draft pick, Jamari Thrash, really in a wide open competition to, have those 4th and 5th jobs and even maybe challenge Elijah Moore in the slot for the 3rd job. I think it's a very, very open competition behind Cooper and Jeudy, and especially the rookie Thrash has a lot of potential.
I know you do the college football show for PFF. When you look at Jeudy and Moore and Tillman, and we'll throw Thrash and David Bell in there, talent? I mean, is there talent and somebody needs to ascend? I mean, is it unreasonable to think 1 or 2 of those guys could actually take off?
Yeah, no, I think it's very reasonable to think one or two of them should. That's what you would hope is out of six guys that three of them can really emerge as playmakers, right? We've seen Judy's top end talent back at Alabama, and even at times with Denver, he was better in 2022 than 23. He's a good route runner. He's just really thin, right, and has trouble with the more physical parts of the game. Elijah Moore, I think, could be better utilized in the slot. Like in college, he was in the slot 92% of the time, and in his NFL career, it's only been 42. And, I think you have certain guys. Cedric Tillman came from a very collegey offense in Tennessee where he ran vertically a lot, right? So he's not the most polished route runner. Or, David Bell made guys miss in college and he's not doing it in the NFL, but we've seen it before. What you have, I think, is a collection of guys with both talent and flaws, right? So when you have guys like that, they're not the Justin Jeffersons and Tyreek Hills of the world where they can do everything right. You have to work around their flaws and work the offense to their strengths. So if Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey can better maximize that, then you've got a really talented group of players you can work with.
All right, before we go to break, why Jamari Thrash could become a secret weapon for the Browns. This is from the Last Word on Sports. David Bell, Cedric Tillman have not done much at all when given the chance, so Thrash could be as high a wide receiver 4 when the season starts. In an offense expected to pass a lot with Nick Chubb recovering from injury, Thrash should see the field in spurts. If he can provide a new wrinkle to the offense, could end up being a steal in the 5th round. Again, as a guy that follows college football, what have you seen when you watched Thrash at Louisville and I think it was Georgia State before that?
Correct. Yeah. So the two things that stick out to me with Thrash, and actually I should say three things. He's not the most physically imposing guy at all, but he's super competitive and he just has a natural, subtle feel for route running. He knows how to get himself open. And then I think the third thing is that he makes guys miss after the catch. And that's really the role that David Bell was supposed to play coming out of Purdue 2 years ago. And he hasn't gotten it done so far in Cleveland. So I think David Bell actually should be the one probably most threatened by Jamari Thrash because he's a good route runner who makes people miss after the catch. I think he does a lot of subtle, kind of those good football player things. He might not be the most elite athlete, but he just knows how to play the position. And anytime you can find guys that can make plays after the catch, you want those guys on the field.
Dalton Wasserman from Pro Football Focus and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we do have an update on Zadarius Smith, who left practice today. We'll give that to you on the other side of the break. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch, find the lettuce, make a match, lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio, lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions of prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns with Dalton Wasserman, PFF data analyst. So we told you earlier in the show that Zadarius Smith left on a cart. Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, found out it was a knee contusion. Left knee contusion will be reevaluated in the morning. So a knee contusion sounds better than any of the alternatives. Dalton, that's a guy that was really productive with some of the advanced metrics opposite Myles Garrett a season ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's huge news to have him not have a major injury there because really their defensive line, Myles Garrett heading in, that's the heart and soul of their team, right? When you talk about Garrett and Smith coming off the edge and a really good collection of interior pass rushers too with Maurice Hurst and Shelby Harris and Dalvin Tomlinson, everything works because they don't have to blitz a whole lot and they can send a front four at any quarterback in the league and feel good about it, right? And then it rolls back to, okay, we have extra help and coverage and things like that. But having a healthy Smith across from Garrett is a massive, massive asset for them.
So Jim Schwartz, Browns defensive coordinator, was asked about Zadarius Smith's comments a couple days ago that the defense had some unfinished business this year.
I mean, maybe a little bit in the off season, but once we get into training camp, our theme every day is embrace that practice and improve and try to keep our eyes on what's most important now. We can't make up for anything last year right now unless we attack each day, and we work out inconsistencies, we improve our technique, we improve our teamwork, all those different things. So, further on down the line, we'll have places for themes and, things like that. But right now, it's just a work, go to work every day and try to improve.
Dalton, their defense could end up with worse numbers and improve just because of the quarterbacks they have to face this year.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's a tough slate of quarterbacks. And one thing that stuck out to me as I was looking over some numbers for them is there's also massive home and road splits, right? When they play at home in Brown Stadium in the friendly confines there, they're basically the best defense in football. But there's a significant drop-off when they go and play their road games. And at times they look like even a bottom 8 or 10 unit. So I think they have plenty of enough talent, honestly, to play with any quarterback. You saw that even when they played the 49ers and won that game against Brock Purdy and all those weapons last season. But they need to put it together more consistently, especially in run defense. I think there's teams that can run the ball that give them problems. Their pass defense is elite, man. When you talk about an elite defensive line in a secondary with not a lot of holes. So, the better quarterbacks are an issue, but I think that's less of an issue to me than just finding their own consistency, especially in the road games.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it earlier. Any idea why that would be? I mean, is it crowd noise? Can't be it. It's a head scratcher.
It really is. It's really confusing because the old phrase is defense travels, right? And you would think that would be the part that, okay, even when they go on the road to even last year, when they lost to, say, like a Denver, and I know they had quarterback issues in that game. I believe Dorian Thompson-Robinson started that game for Cleveland. But, you would think they would come out and play better. They gave up over 30 points a game on the road. So I just have to wonder, is it a mental preparation thing? Is it just, not being in as friendly and as loud an environment when they're on defense? It's very strange because normally defenses that talented play well wherever they go.
All right, so this is from the 33rdteam.com. Those are former executives, player personnel guys in the NFL. 2024 NFL Power Rankings. They go Chiefs 1, Niners 2, Lions 3, Ravens 4, Bills, Texans, Packers, Eagles, and then they have the Browns at 9. Outside of the 49ers, Browns might have the best overall roster in the NFL outside of the quarterback position. That's the only reason they are ranked 9th. Browns need Deshaun Watson to get back playing at a high level, or else they will continue to be just a borderline playoff team. Yes, he needs to play better for them to be a threat to go to the Super Bowl. Joe Flacco, for as well as he played, turned the ball over like crazy. If Deshaun Watson plays competent, they are a threat to win the AFC North. If he plays really well, they're a threat to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ed Watson's one of the biggest X factors in the entire AFC, and that's a division. To me, it's really the only division in football where you feel like all 4 teams really have a legitimate shot to win it, and the Browns are in that as much as anybody, right? And I think it just comes down to the whole thing being more consistent, and it's always hard. I've done roster rankings like this the last couple of years as well, and how much weight do you place on the quarterback, right? When you talk about a team like Kansas City where, maybe their roster isn't number 1, but you do have Patrick Mahomes. So how much of a bump do you give that, or how much of a bump down do you give a team with a question at quarterback, right? Like Watson. I think the other thing, too, is Nick Chubb coming off a major injury, right? It's not just the usual ACL. It was just one of the worst injuries that we saw all of last season, and he dealt with that once before in college too. So I think you really have the 2 prime pieces on this offense as major question marks heading into the season. I can see why they're down at 9, but certainly they're going to be in the playoff race with their defense alone. And you mentioned it, if they just get competent play out of their quarterbacks, which Flacco, despite some gunslinging, gave them, they can certainly be a playoff team. And again, if this was a team that got a home field advantage with their defense, could be really dangerous for almost anybody.
Well, the other thing is they bring back they didn't really lose anybody that they really wanted to come back. And they have guys that were hurt that are coming back as well. They did that with, their 4th and 5th tackles and playing 4 quarterbacks. I mean, there's got to be a mix in there somehow that is a positive.
Absolutely. I mean, you wonder if just some of it comes down to good luck, right? Good and bad luck from season to season, and injury luck and volatility. It seems like there's 4 or 5 teams in the league every year that just catch the injury bug so bad that it kills them. But the Browns caught it and it didn't kill them, and they still found a way to make the playoffs, even with Joe Flacco as their quarterback. So they have a boatload of talent, no question. They're starting 22. If they're all out there and effective, is very likely a top 5 roster in the NFL. There are just enough question marks at very, very key spots, right? When you talk about quarterback and offensive tackle and their run defense still isn't great. And wide receiver, they have a lot of open competitions going. There's question marks at key spots as opposed to just legitimate holes. So, you know what? Honestly, it might just come down to better luck.
As always, I can't argue with that without question. Dalton Wasserman, appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff. Thanks very much.
Appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Dalton Wasserman, PFF data analyst. He is also the co-host of the PFF College Football Show. Really good stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.